To abandon your senses and everyday experience in favor of such unfounded science fiction fantasies is a fallacy of appeal to authority so extreme that it leaves the brainwashed believer impotent to trust his own natural instincts and forever thereafter chained to the fantastical explanations of astronomical charlatans. In the flat Earth model, the sun and moon luminaries revolve around the Earth once every 24 hours for the sun, and approximately 25 hours for the moon, illuminating like spotlights the areas over which they pass. The sun's annual journey from tropic to tropic, solstice to solstice, is what determines the length and character of days, nights, and seasons. This is why equatorial regions experience almost year-round summer and heat, while higher latitudes north and especially south experience more distinct seasons with harsh winters. The heliocentric model claims seasons change based on the ball Earth's alleged axial tilt and elliptical orbit around the Sun. Their flawed current model even places us closest to the Sun, 91,400,000 miles, in January, when it is actually winter, and farthest from the Sun, 94,500,000 miles, in July, when it's actually summer throughout much of the Earth. They say due to the ball Earth's tilt, different places receive different amounts of direct sunlight, and that is what produces the seasonal and temperature changes. This makes little sense, however, because if the Sun's heat travels over 90 million miles to reach the ball Earth, how could a slight tilt, a mere few thousand miles maximum, negate the Sun's 90 million mile journey, giving us simultaneous tropical summers and Antarctic winters? Thomas Winship said, "The Earth is a stretched-out structure which diverges from the central north in all directions towards the south. The equator, being midway between the north center and the southern circumference, divides the course of the Sun into north and south declination. The longest circle around the world which the Sun makes is when it has reached its greatest southern declination. Gradually going northwards, the circle is contracted. In about 3 months after the southern extremity of its path has been reached, the Sun makes a circle round the equator. Still pursuing a northerly course as it goes round and above the world, in another 3 months the greatest northern declination is reached, when the Sun again begins to go towards the south. In north latitudes, when the Sun is going north, it rises earlier each day, is higher at noon, and sets later, while in southern latitudes at the same time, the Sun as a matter of course rises later, reaches a lesser altitude at noon, and sets earlier. In northern latitudes, during the southern summer, say from September to December, the Sun rises later each day, is lower at noon, and sets earlier, while in the south he rises earlier, reaches a higher altitude at noon, and sets later each day. This movement round the Earth daily is the cause of the alternations of day and night, while his northerly and southerly courses produce the seasons. When the Sun is south of the equator, it is summer in the south and winter in the north, and vice versa. The fact of the alternation of the seasons flatly contradicts the Newtonian delusion that the Earth revolves in an orbit round the Sun. It is said that summer is caused by the Earth being nearest the Sun, and winter by its being farthest from the Sun. But if the reader will follow the argument in any textbook, he will see that according to the theory, when the Earth is nearest the Sun, there must be summer in both northern and southern latitudes, and in like manner, when it is farthest from the Sun, it must be winter all over the Earth at the same time, because the whole of the globe Earth would then be farthest from the Sun. In short, it is impossible to account for the recurrence of seasons on the assumption that the Earth is globular and that it revolves in an orbit around the Sun. Gabrielle Henriette said, "The essential feature of the year is its division into 2 equal periods of 6 months, based first on the predominating length of the days over that of the nights, and vice versa, conditions which are governed by the varying hours of sunrise and sunset, and secondly, by the either high or low height reached by the Sun in the heavens at midday. The first cycle, during which the days are longer than the nights, and the Sun reaches its culminating point of the year, extends from the spring equinox to the autumn equinox, i.e. March 21st to September 22nd, and the second cycle, during which, inversely, the duration of the nights exceeds that of the days, and the Sun descends to its lowest point of the year, extends from the autumn equinox to the spring equinox, i.e. September 23rd to March 20th. These 2 6-month periods are also characterized by an opposition of temperature. During the first cycle, which corresponds to spring and summer, the heat gradually rises and falls, while during the second cycle, which comprises autumn and winter, it is the intensity of the cold which progressively increases and decreases." If the Earth were truly a globe, the Arctic and Antarctic polar regions and areas of comparable latitude north and south of the equator should share similar conditions and characteristics such as comparable temperatures, seasonal changes, length of daylight, plant and animal life. In reality, however, the Arctic and Antarctic regions and areas of comparable latitude north and south of the equator differ greatly in many ways. Thomas Winship says, "If the earth be the globe of popular belief, the same amount of heat and cold, summer and winter, should be experienced at the same latitudes north and south of the equator. The same number of plants and animals would be found, and the same general conditions exist. That the very opposite is the case disproves the globular assumption. The great contrasts between places at the same latitudes north and south of the equator is a strong argument against the received doctrine of the rotundity of the earth." Antarctica is by far the coldest place on Earth, with an average annual temperature of approximately -57 degrees Fahrenheit and a record low of 135.8. The average annual temperature at the North Pole, however, is a comparatively warm 4 degrees. Throughout the year, temperatures in the Antarctic vary less than half the amount at comparable Arctic latitudes. The northern Arctic region enjoys moderately warm summers and manageable winters, whereas the southern Antarctic region never even warms enough to melt the perpetual snow and ice. Thomas Winship wrote, "This uniformity of temperature partly accounts for the great accumulation of ice which is formed, not on account of the great severity of the winter, but because there is practically no summer to melt it. In the Antarctic there is eternal winter, and snow never melts. As far north as a man has traveled, he has found reindeer and hare basking in the sun, and country brilliant with rich flora. Within the Antarctic circle, no plant is to be found. The island of Kerguelen at 49 degrees southern latitude has only 18 species of native plants that can survive its hostile climate. Compare this with the island of Iceland at 65 degrees northern latitude. 16 degrees further north of the equator than Kerguelen is south, yet Iceland is home to 870 species of native plants. On the Isle of Georgia, just 54 degrees southern latitude, the same latitude as Canada or England in the north, where dense forests of various tall trees abound, the infamous Captain Cook wrote that he was unable to find a single shrub large enough to make a toothpick. Cook wrote, "Not a tree was to be seen. The lands which lie to the south are doomed by nature to perpetual frigidness, never to feel the warmth of the sun's rays, whose horrible and savage aspect I have not words to describe. Even marine life is sparse in certain tracts of vast extent, and the sea-bird is seldom observed flying over such lonely wastes. The contrasts between the limits of organic life in Arctic and Antarctic zones is very remarkable and significant. Vegetables and land animals are found at nearly 80 degrees in the north, while from the parallel of 58 degrees in the south, the lichen and such-like plants only clothe the rocks, and sea-birds and the cetaceous tribes alone are seen upon the desolate beaches."